following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
This is Mick Shots, streaming live on DallasCowboys.com and the official Dallas Cowboys app. Now, here are Bill Jones, Everson Walls, and Mickey Spagnola.
And it is June 11th, 2020, the 92nd day of the pandemic, and 41 days away from when that Cowboys jet would be taking off for California. Instead, training camp in Frisco, Texas. Well, not officially, but maybe it's 41 days away. We shall see. Bill Jones, Mickey Spagnola, Everson Walls. This is Mick Shots, and it's the final Mick Shots of the offseason. We're going to take a break after this show, and when training camp kicks off, we will be back. But in the meantime, so we got a lot to talk about over the course of the next hour here as we look at the calendar and what lies ahead. There's going to be a whole lot that happens here in the next month or so. Mickey Spagnola?
Yeah, absolutely, a whole lot. And hopefully we find something out and we don't have to keep qualifying everything about when it's going to start and, you know, when the players are going to report and if there's going to be a Hall of Fame game. So we've got some time here, but the calendar's getting short on some of these decisions that have to be made from a timing standpoint.
You know, what I saw that kind of made me a little nervous, guys, I have to admit, is watching what's going on with the college players and those that are starting to test positive for the virus. Some are asymptomatic. I think you had 5 at the University of Alabama and several big universities. And when that starts happening, I'm very curious to see how the NCAA will handle this situation and how that will affect the season and how that will affect the opening of universities, because it's not just athletes that are getting these issues. Also, the student body may also have the same issues, especially with the protests going around. I brought that up last week in regards to how this protest is going to also be a major factor in not just how the NFL opens up, but sometimes you've got industries around the country that are shutting down, restaurants that are shutting down because they open up too soon. And so that kind of concerns me. The other thing is, I see barbershops must be doing well because Spags is looking really good over there, man. Look at you. Oh my God, you look so cute.
I can't see myself in the mirror anymore. You know what I took?
Boy, you took some blackjack beard lube and I don't know whatever.
You know what I told you is I was hoping it would grow long and curl like it was in college. Well, it wouldn't curl anymore. It was just flipping at the ends, and it just looked disgusting. So.
That's what gray hair does, Spaz.
So
you should have asked me about that.
When we finished the show last Thursday, I went straight to the barbershop, got my hair cut. I looked at the floor and I told my man Bill, I said, "Where'd all that gray hair come from? Did you cut somebody before me and didn't sweep up?"
So, you know, actually that number at Alabama, Everson, has gone up to 8 who have tested positive now there. University of North Texas announced 2 or 3 of their players, as they just reported back, I guess. And it's going to go on all across the country. There's going to be positive tests. The big thing is whether they're asymptomatic, you know, the way they're going to handle it, obviously, at the NCAA level, and the way the NFL will, too. They'll go into quarantine for a couple of weeks, and
I think it just affects the fluidity of the openings and people trying to move forward and stay on schedule. It's going to be very fluid in regards to how they deal with this, because every university is going to be different. Every football team is going to be different in regards to how they do it. I think they need to have one particular way to get it done, and man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Apparently, we're having some difficulty with Mickey's microphone. We'll get that corrected. In the meantime, Everson, we got a lot to talk about over the next hour as we're going to take a look at what the Cowboys did this offseason, how they handled the needs that they have or had as the offseason began. Some great additions during the offseason, both in the draft and in free agency. The news this morning, though, as Everson, as far as the way things look as far as returning to the Star, as far as the players returning to the Star. Of course, the coaches were able to go back starting last Friday. And players, it appears that the latest that came out is the virtual offseason can continue for another couple of weeks. It's the team's choice. Some are ending it this week. And the Zoom sessions or WebEx sessions that they're doing. But they have extended it for a couple of weeks through June 26th. There's some speculation that the doors might be open to rookies and newcomers to teams as early as June 26th to return to the facilities for individual workouts, and they'll do it in stages whenever that is. And there's also some talk that maybe the preseason will get trimmed down to a couple of games. Because what they have to figure out on that is what kind of condition are the players in once they get back, and how much time will they need to play in actual games, even if it's just preseason games. So everything is very much up in the air. Could
you imagine as a commissioner, as a team owner, or even as a player, looking at schedules that may be fluid, right? Are we looking at a schedule to where if something happens to a team to where you get 8 players that are tested positive for corona, how does that affect the rest of your season? And I'm not trying to be insensitive here because we keep talking about how the players being positive affects the season. How is it going to affect their personal lives? I mean, they have to go home. They have to go home to their wives, their kids. When you wonder how that affects their mental readiness in regards to football, all of a sudden something else takes precedence over a football season. So we need to be a little bit more aware of how that's going to be affecting not just the Cowboys and not just the NFL, but how it's going to affect these guys and their families, with newborns at the house and things of that nature. You're talking about staff that some may be a little bit older than most and maybe into that very high-risk category. Those are the kind of things that, as we look forward to the season, these are the kind of things that they're just going to be popping up in our way throughout the entire season.
You guys got me now?
I hear you.
Okay,
I hear you.
So here was a novel thing I saw where Bruce Arians at Tampa Bay, and he was kind of talking about what you guys were saying. Guys are probably going to come down with this. He goes, the one position I can't afford to lose is if I have 3 quarterbacks, I can't afford to lose one, or have one get infected and then cause the other room to get infected, right? The other guys in the quarterback room. So his thought was, maybe I self-quarantine one of my quarterbacks. He doesn't come in, stays away from the team.
Yes.
And that way, if somebody else has to get quarantined, then I can bring in a fresh guy and have him ready to go. And I was reading it and I was going, what's he talking about? And then I thought about it and it's like, yeah, you got a whole bunch of extra defensive linemen, offensive linemen, running backs, but you don't have a whole heck of a lot of quarterbacks. And if that gets in the quarterback room, you're going to have some problems.
Not just that, Spags. We talk about field goal kickers. We talk about punters. These are very specialist type of positions to where you can't just have anybody going back there trying to do that. If you recall back in the day, if we would have had this problem with the Cowboys, let's say Roger goes down, let's say another quarterback goes down, and then here comes Charlie Waters. You got the strong safety probably playing quarterback.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that could happen these days, but it looks like it probably can. You're going to have to be, extremely flexible in how your roster is made out.
They might have to come up with a special list, like a 2-week coronavirus list, where you can put a guy on because you don't want to put him on injured reserve and lose him for 9 weeks. They might have to make a special dispensation if somebody tests positive.
Or even increase the practice squad so that you've got a kicker and a punter also on the practice squad. There's all sorts of things. It's uncharted waters, obviously.
Uncharted waters.
For everybody.
I like that, Bill. Uncharted waters. That's exactly what this is.
It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out as we go along. Mickey, in your column this week, you talk about the Hall of Fame a little bit. As far as the Hall of Fame game goes, and I mentioned that there are reports this morning that there's some talk anyway that the preseason could get whittled down to a couple of games. We'll see what happens on that. But what are the scenarios as far as the Hall of Fame goes?
Well, Dave Baker, the president of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, talked about it yesterday, and he said basically they've got 5 different scenarios working. The first one obviously is to play the game as scheduled with a full stadium, and he pointed out that within 20 minutes they sold out 22,000 tickets for the Cowboys and Steelers to attend the game. The second way would be no fans. The third way would be maybe we push the Hall of Fame game back to late August. Don't play it a week early if the NFL reduces the number of preseason games. And then it was talking about the inductions, that maybe you don't play the game and you have the induction, or you push the induction back to possibly September, where the extra guys that were or selected this year were going to be inducted. I think it was the second or third week of the season. And then the possibility of pushing the induction back to the spring of next year, or possibly just do 2 of them in 2021 back in August. So they're kind of up in the air. Now, the Hall of Fame did open yesterday. Dave Baker pointed out it was the first time since the Hall of Fame came into existence that it had been closed for more than 2 consecutive days. And that's a long time, and they've been shut down for 3 months. He also pointed out the first 2 people in was a Cowboy fan and a Saints fan. So yeah, I mean, the starting time for the Cowboys for training camp is contingent on if they're going to play that game or not. Because if they're playing the game, they get the report a week early. If they're not playing a game, then they're just like the rest of the teams. So yeah, this is pretty complicated, and this is in college football where they probably have 120 guys, come out to practice in August. You've got 90 guys. They might have to make some adjustments on that, on not only the roster, but as you said, Bill, the practice squad.
Well, we've got, as far as HBCUs are concerned, the Hall of Fame has a $800 million renovation going forward. And Doug Williams and James Shaq Harris, they have been very strategic in getting more recognition for HBCU players throughout the past, and of course going towards in the future. So they have an exhibit there that's about 10,000 square feet dedicated strictly to HBCUs, and they've also scheduled a football game between 2 HBCU schools right there in Canton at the Hall of Fame. And that was amazing last year. I attended that last year, and I was expecting to attend that this year. I don't even know if they're going to have that as well. I believe that game was scheduled to be played even before the NFL Hall of Fame game. So it's affecting everyone up and down the line. I know how that setup is there. I know how tough it is to do social distancing in the little concession stand, the concession area up there. So much food up there, everybody having a good time. And everyone's been so jittery and staying home. You could imagine that if they were to play that game, it's going to be flooded with people. Now, they don't even care about HBCUs. They're just going to be going there just because they need to get out of the house And I think that game will be heavily attended if we do play it. So, yeah, it's going to be – Hall of Fame has to deal with a few things that are going to be pretty urgent coming up in August.
Dr. Fauci needs to get busy on a vaccine.
That would just clear everything up, literally and figuratively, a vaccine.
I actually have a friend who appears on one of the national news networks as one of their medical experts, and I asked him this morning, and he is confident there's going to be a vaccine by the end of the year.
Wow.
At some point, and before the end of the year, there will be a vaccine. He is very confident of that. So
From what I heard,
there you go, Dr. Fauci.
From what I heard from
the problem is that's
the real Dr.
months
Fauci.
away.
From what I heard from the real Dr. Fauci, they've got 3 drug companies working on the serum. I think that's why they have such confidence. That's a good job, Bill.
All right, we got so much to get to. I'm looking at the clock, and we don't have time, Mickey, to get into what you want to talk about and what I'd like to talk about, and Everson will too, on Gerald McCoy, because we could go on and on talking about him. Leighton Vander Esch, though, one of the positives of this offseason, the fact that Leighton Vander Esch, for the last month, at least the last month, if not 2 months, has said he is 100% raring to go, and that's a big positive from this offseason.
Yeah, that certainly helps out that linebacker position, and we heard that a couple weeks ago when we interviewed his representative, Ron Slavin here, also represents Alden Smith, and he talked about how, he mentioned that Leighton feels better than any other time he has in his life after he had the surgery to correct the tightness that was going on in his neck. He also pointed out to us that he basically last year, until they sat him down and then had the surgery, was playing with one arm. And the point that, people were, I think, pointing out that, he's missing tackles. And
yes.
As Ron said, his rookie year, however they judge this, he had the highest tackle percentage of any linebacker in the league. So that was good news, and they certainly need him on the field. They need a revitalized Jalen Smith on the field, and if they can keep Sean Lee healthy as he kept himself last year, that's a pretty good linebacker core, and they have some backups that have played. But having Leighton Vander Esch back to being LVE would be huge for this team, and it sounds like all systems go, and he would have been ready to go whenever they started the offseason after he had the neck surgery.
I was one of those guys that was very concerned, Mick, about the origin of the surgery and the injury. And Ron made us feel a little bit better after talking with him about how that was just really corrective surgery, that he's been having a problem with that for a minute. And you could tell, especially in the Jets game, where I think it really came into fruition about the issues he was having with his tackling. And of course, at the time, no one knew that that was the problem, that he was having an ongoing injury. And of course, I raised my hand. I was one of those guys, Spags, that was saying, what the hell's going on with this dude? What is happening?
Yeah.
And you could see that there was a fall off in his game. And I thought it was mental. I did not know it was physical. So then you put that with what Ron told us about his basketball acuity. Then now I have a totally different aspect as far as Leighton Vander Esch, because I'm a basketball guy. That's how he's able to make the moves. That's how he's able to get in position to make the plays, because of his athletic ability. But he wasn't able to finish. So I am excited to see not just how that's going to affect his rise in play, but when you have a unit that is so close as their linebacker unit is, I think his good play, hopefully that good play, will just spread through the rest of the linebacker position, because they lost that Hot Boys moniker real fast last year, and I want to see them get that back.
Everson, you're a basketball guy. How many points did you average at Berkner?
Bill, I must have scored a few on you, right? I was a guy. I was like Gary Payton, man. I was like the glove. I made my own offense. I probably averaged about 14 points a game.
There you go. All right. First team all district, I'm sure.
Of course.
Yeah. Probably made the Dallas Morning News all
I
area
was
team.
first team all defense. They had all defense back then, right? I was first team all defense.
Yeah, there you go. I know they didn't have the 3-point shot.
No, they didn't. I didn't have one either, Bill. I didn't have one either.
All right, we continue with Mick Shots in a moment and the biggest move the Cowboys made this offseason when we come back.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Essilor is a proud sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys, helping fans see more and do more with our best vision solutions. Our lens technologies reveal a world more beautiful than you can imagine. For a limited time, get the Essilor Next Gen offer. When you buy the latest generation of Transitions lenses with select Essilor lenses, you can choose a second pair of clear lenses for free with qualifying frame purchases. Restrictions apply. Find a participating eye care professional by visiting EssilorUSA.com. Essilor. See more, do more.
Want to use what the pros use? How about the official men's skincare brand of the Dallas Cowboys, Jack Black? Right now you can get the Jack Black Starter, a curated collection of Cowboys locker room favorites for just $10 with free shipping. The starter includes 4 Jack Black skincare favorites plus a full-sized intense therapy lip balm. Go to getjackblack.com/Cowboys and use the code word TEAMJB. That's getjackblack.com/Cowboys. The Jack Black Starter, $10, free shipping.
Your new apartment's big. Such a great deal.
It's okay.
Just okay? What's not to...
It's right above the subway!
Well, I bet you don't even notice it after the...
That's my neighbor, Angus.
A deal that's just okay is not okay. Get a great deal with America's Best Network. Come into an AT&T store to find out how to get one of our popular smartphones for $0 down. Based on GWS 1 score, September 2019.
Back to Mick Shots.
Welcome back to Mick Shots. Mickey Spagnola, Everson Walls. I'm Bill Jones, and we're going to talk about the biggest moves that the Cowboys made this offseason. But right off the top here, Mickey and Everson, I want to give a shout out to my most valuable player this offseason, and that would be one Chris Beam, who behind the scenes here on Mick Shots has done yeoman work to get us on the air each and every week. And even as the show goes along, there are times where things get a little rocky, and Chris Beam is able to get us back on track from a technical standpoint.
Way to go, Chris. Good job, buddy.
He's going to have a lot of practice when we get back to the Star, because we might still be doing this. You never know.
We're going to carry Chris with you. You're going to carry Chris with you everywhere you go, Spanish.
That's right. Absolutely.
There you go. Hey, he's actually been carrying us the entire the last couple of months here. All right, Mickey, who would you say is the biggest offseason move the Cowboys made this year?
Well, the biggest move I think they made, at least from a need standpoint and just an overall effect, if he ever gets in the locker room, would be one Gerald McCoy, defensive tackle. This guy, I mean, I understand he's 32 years old. I understand the last 2 seasons his production hasn't been what it had been early in his career when he was a 6-time Pro Bowler at Tampa Bay. But just to have, I think, his presence in the locker room will help this team out immensely. I didn't know much about him. Bill, you knew about him. Oklahoma guy. I think when he was coming out in the draft, it was 2010, right? And I think we attended the Pro Day workout at Oklahoma. And
yep, we did.
And when I saw him work out, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this guy. Well, he ended up being the 3rd pick in the draft, but I really didn't know much about him. Well, since the Cowboys have signed him to a 3-year deal, $18 million, he's done a bunch of interviews, and he's so well-spoken, and he's so thoughtful, and has so much charisma. And the other day, I think it was Tuesday, June 9th, he did an interview with Colin Cowherd on radio, or I guess TV, there's video, whatever it was, and unbelievable 20 minutes. I mean, it was spellbinding to listen to him for 20 minutes. And just the start, Bill, when Cowherd asked him, he said, did your decision to play for the Cowboys, he goes, and I'm sure there were other teams interested in you, did that decision have to do with like marketing, a business standpoint for not only this year, but, you know, your life after football? And he goes, can I answer that with questions? And Cowherd goes, yeah, sure. He goes, who's the top analyst on Fox on game day? Troy Aikman. He goes, when John Gruden left the Monday Night Football booth, who did they hire? Jason Witten. And now, this year, who's going to be the highest paid analyst on TV? Tony Romo. And he goes, I'll just leave it there. Because it was like, you know, and his point was, and Cowherd made a good point, you know, when you play for the Cowboys, you're going to be on TV, you're going to be on national TV, you're going to have the highest rated games. And McCoy pointed out that in his 9 years with Tampa Bay, that he was on a nationally televised game 4 times. He goes, I'm going to be on 5 times this year. He said, so enough said. So his point was, you play for the Cowboys, you get recognized. And that was just the beginning of the interview. And then when he got into all the other stuff of the things going on these days with the protests and, you know, what his point was, just unbelievable. So, Bill, and I know why you asked the question, it's like, and my point in Mick shots was, his locker needs to be in the middle of the locker room. On his right side needs to be Tristan Hill. On the left side, it needs to be Nevin Gallimore. And Antoine Woods could be across right in front of him, because I think he will have an effect on these young guys on how to conduct yourself in the National Football League.
You know, all I saw of that interview was about a 4-minute clip. And you're talking about, he was asked about all that's going on and the protests and so forth. And he basically, the message in that 4-minute answer to that question was about spreading love. We need to spread love around the world, okay, to our neighbors, to whoever. And it was that infectious personality that he has, and it's just a positive outlook that he has on life and so forth. Yeah, he understands the problems that we have as a country right now, and yet he's got an answer to it in that, hey, by loving each other, that's the way we can get through all of this stuff. But you can imagine what kind of impact a personality like that will have on a locker room, and I'm sure he had that effect in Tampa and then for his 1 year in Carolina. How important is it to have that in your locker room, Everson?
No, it's extremely important. You know, these days and times, we have people that are just more aware of what's going on outside of their locker rooms, outside of their homes. And it's good to see that McCoy is there because, you know, the Cowboys really, we talk about being a Cowboy, being an ex-Cowboy. We talk about the commentators and all of the perks that go with that. Well, I talked about it last week. There's a lot of responsibility as an organization that also goes with that. You know, you're at the top of the heap in regards to visibility and notoriety as a Dallas Cowboy organization. So with much power goes much responsibility. That's just the way it is. And I think Gerald understands that. So when he goes into a locker room, back in the day, we were called locker room lawyers. Mm-hmm. And owners and coaches didn't like guys like that because they thought that they were distracting them from what was at hand, the task at hand, which is just football. Well, now we're different now. It's not just about football. It's about the pandemic. It's about looking out for your fellow player, looking out for your fellow man, that whether he's African American or someone that you don't want to spread a virus to. Right now, it's all about taking care of each other. So yes, he is right in regards to love being the way to go. You have to consider what other people are going through, and you have to be sensitive to that. And I think that's the new NFL. That doesn't make athletes any weaker. That makes them smarter. Don't look at the athlete as just that dumb jock that needs to keep dribbling the ball or needs to keep just playing football. This is about our lives. This is about our own families as well. So I think it was behoove the Cowboys to be ready for a player like that who can really spread an entire different message throughout the locker room that you really haven't seen in any locker rooms up until now.
You know, and to follow up what Mickey was getting into there, I remember the first time that I saw Gerald McCoy in person was at the Big 12 Media Day, probably back in about 2008. And I was blown away by his charisma and just how eloquent he was, the way he spoke. And you could see that what kind of impact he probably has as a leader on a team, but also as a player. Oklahoma played Texas. And probably it was the 09 season. Texas won. That was the year Texas went on to play in the national championship game. It was a close defensive struggle. And I remember Mac Brown after that game, it was basically the first thing that came out of his mouth. He said, "Boy, that number 93 on that other team sure is a good player." I mean, they had problems with him all day long. And I think even at age 32, he's going to have an impact, especially in a rotation there on the defensive line, because the Cowboys can now have that. They got numbers in their defensive line where they can rotate guys in. And I think from a physical standpoint, just playing, I think he's still got a lot left in the tank. Mickey, I think you're back.
Yeah, I am. And, the other thing I was going to say is a lot of times, and Everson, you can speak to this, when you're a new guy in the locker room, you kind of tippy-toe your way in. I don't see no tippy-toeing with him. He feels like he's got a voice, and if he is in the locker room like he is on these interviews that I've seen, I just think that's a good thing. Tristan Hill, I don't know, he was very young last year, and he needed some guidance. I don't know if anybody took him under his wing. I don't know if Nevin Gallimore needs that, but I'll guarantee you he knows all about Gerald McCoy coming from Oklahoma. I would imagine Gerald McCoy's name comes up over and over and over again in that Sooner locker room or in that program. So I just like the fact that he just did it so natural as a newcomer. Hopefully he can continue to do that and have that effect in the locker room, being a veteran player.
And having gone through that myself, Spags, going from the Cowboys to the Giants, you have to be very strategic on what team that you choose to go to. And he realized there's a need in the Cowboys locker room, on the Cowboys defensive line for his type of expertise. So when you use that type of strategy and you put yourself in the best position, what you're looking at is a little comfort zone that you want there when you come out and play. You don't want to be questioning yourself. Did I go to the wrong team? Do they really want me here? As you get older, all of those insecurities go by the wayside. And he's able to speak more clearly on certain subjects. He's able to be more powerful in that locker room. And therefore, it gives you the confidence to be that leader on that team. And if nothing else, you want to enhance your position. In other words, you want to enhance the defensive line. That's what he wants to do. That's his main job, is to make sure that that defensive line is better. And he wants to make sure it's better because he's the one that's in there showing his experience, drawing back on things and plays that he had to go through in the past. So it all starts to register a little bit better as you get older. I had my best year in New York, believe it or not. It wasn't Super Bowl year. It was a year after when I had to play safety and they took me out of my position. So the Cowboys, as well as the Giants, you have the luxury of having that veteran who really can do more than one thing and who will be very unselfish in his chores and trying to make that team better.
How much better do you think this defensive line is this year with the additions of not only McCoy, but Dontari Poe? You look at in the draft with Gallimore and Anai, the later round pick at defensive end. We'll see what Aldon Smith has. We'll see if Randy Gregory comes back. Tyrone Crawford getting back, if he's back healthy again. How much better is this defensive line?
I think they have more guys to fill those four spots. But I still think, Bill, at some point there's question marks. Because if you look at the year McCoy had last year, and I don't know if it had an effect on changing systems, going to a new team, and the same thing with Dontari Poe. If you look at their numbers weren't anywhere close to what their career numbers had been. So I think they were good, kind of inexpensive moves to bring in two veterans like that and two bigger players inside. But let's remember, I think everybody forgets, Malik Collins was pretty darn good, and they lost him. So to have these two guys come in, to have the ability to put Tyrone Crawford on that defensive line either inside or out. But again, a question mark there. He's had dual hip surgeries. And when I say dual, you only got two hips, right? And he had a surgery on each one of them. So, what's he got left? Ken Alden Smith, what has he got? Antoine Woods was coming off off-season surgery, hip surgery, by the way. What's he got? Can Tristan Hill help? And then you mentioned Gallimore and a rookie. So to me, if this defense is going to improve, where the improvement needs to come is up front, because they were only average, rushing the quarterback, getting sacks. And one of their big problems against good teams was they had trouble stopping the run.
Yes,
so,
they did.
We can sit here and go, the linebackers were getting exposed because the up front wasn't holding up their end of the bargain.
Yes, they
so
that's
to me,
so true, Spad. And that's the thing that I worry about in regards to that, is because this is the good thing about it. The system is different, guys. You've got Mike Nolan coming in with a much more aggressive concept coming up front. Linebackers blitzing, defensive linemen running games. I think that's going to make our defensive line a lot more effective and a lot more active. Along with that activity, you won't see the Minnesota Vikings, you won't see Cook running through there and just gashing us the way he was last year in November. I look forward to our defense being a lot more active. I think that chaos that they're going to create up front will be much better for our numbers for our defensive line. They may not be better, but I think it will transfer to our linebackers, that they will be making more plays because of the chaos that the defensive line is creating up front.
And to borrow a phrase from Mickey, oh, by the way, they did lose Robert Quinn in free agency too, right,
absolutely.
Mickey?
And so when I hear people say, wow, they're so much better than last year, well, I think to be determined on that. I think they've got some candidates to fill in, but now how well do these guys play? And, the other thing about Quinn, that 11 and a half sacks, he wasn't so great about setting the edge, though, on the right side against the run. And I ain't trying to pick on him, because 11 and a half sacks, right? But again, you've got to be able to play the run. And if you look at the problems the Cowboys have had over the last year and a half when they've struggled, it's been stopping teams running the football. And that's got to improve also. It's not all about sacks.
All right, it's break time, and we've got one final segment of this offseason, and that means one final Mickey Spagnuolo read of the offseason. Coming up next.
Since 1865, Stetson hats are American-made with pride right here in Texas. And Stetson is proud to be on the field with America's team. Want to show your Texas and team pride too? You can. By purchasing your own Stetson, you can look just like how the flag guys do on field at every home game. Stetson hats, the official crown of all self-respecting Cowboys, and your favorite football team.
Get yours today at shop.dallascowboys.com or at stetson.com.
Your new apartment's big. Such a great deal.
It's okay.
Just okay? What's not too...
It's right above the subway!
Well, I bet you don't even notice it after the...
That's my neighbor, Angus.
A deal that's just okay is not okay. Get a great deal with America's Best Network. Come into an AT&T store to find out how to get one of our popular smartphones for $0 down. Based on GWS 1 score, September 2019.
To Dallas's frontline responders, thank you. To show its gratitude, Tide is offering free laundry services in Dallas to the families of frontline responders. Simply bring your laundry and your identification to Tide Cleaners, and they will wash it within 2 days. One thing less for you to worry about. While you take care of us all, Tide will take care of the laundry for the families of frontline responders. To learn more and find a location near you, visit hope.tidecleaners.com.
Essilor is a proud sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys, helping fans see more and do more with our best vision solutions. Our lens technologies reveal a world more beautiful than you can imagine. For a limited time, get the Essilor Next Gen offer. When you buy the latest generation of Transitions lenses with select Essilor lenses, you can choose a second pair of clear lenses for free with qualifying frame purchases. Restrictions apply. Find a participating eye care professional by visiting EssilorUSA.com. Essilor. See more, do more.
Back to Mick Shots.
Well, we're getting closer and closer to Father's Day, and if you're looking for a Father's Day gift for that special guy, you need to go to getjackblack.com because they've got a special going. It's the free JB Classic set plus free 2-day shipping. So if you wait to the last minute, you can get these free items from Jack Black by spending $65. And the things that you can get free along with your $65 purchase is the double duty face moisturizer. And Everson, that's SPF 20. So that'll keep you from getting sunburned. Also, the Mini Intense Therapy Lip Balm, SPF 25, natural mint flavor. Turbo Wash, Supreme Cream Triple Cushion Shave Lather, and Pure Clean Daily Facial Cleanser. And I'll tell you what, today I decided to clean up and I used my beard lube. And it's like
there it is.
Smooth shave. So go to getjackblack.com, use the code DAD, and shop now.
Whoa!
That was good.
That was the best one of the entire offseason. I think that's the best one
he
ever,
saved
Mickey.
his best for last, and now I realize that you can't drink the beard lube. Okay, now I get it. Thank you so much.
Wow, have you been practicing, Mickey?
I've been practicing my enunciation.
Yeah,
that's a tongue twister, man. You have a lot of tongue twisters in there, and I do appreciate you looking out for my skin color and my tan.
That's right. I don't want you getting sunburned when we're standing out at the Star watching training camp.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll be the one worried about sunburn before I will. Yeah.
Now it'll be Bill, not either
center.
of us.
Yeah, Bill.
Well, Mickey, you know, this 9 years ago, 2011, we didn't have an off season for a different reason. Does this bring back any memories?
It brings back a lot of memories to me, Bill, because if you remember, back then, they were trying to negotiate a new CBA, the NFL and the NFLPA, and they instituted a player lockout on March 11th of all days, right?
Whoa! Of all days, meaning
I think that's when things came down with the.
That's exactly right.
COVID.
That's when the Mavericks were playing Denver at the AAC, and word came down about the second quarter of that game that the NBA was shutting down, and that was going to be the last game. It turned out to be the last game of the NBA season until July 31st. So, wow, March 11th.
How about that? And so look at it this way. Not only did the NFL shut down their facilities to the players, but they shut down coaches to the players. They shut down doing any interaction with the players because there was no CBA, and they shut down the league year. It didn't start. And this went on the entire offseason. There was no offseason, no OTAs, no mini camps, no strength and conditioning period, no nothing. Not even allowing the teams to sign players. Couldn't do that either. And this went on and on and on. And on July 25th, July 25th, think about this, they ratified the new CBA. The players had to vote on it. They voted on it, approved it on Monday. Tuesday, the facilities opened, and Wednesday, July 27th, we headed out to San Antonio for the start of training camp. Training camp. They didn't have any off-season, no supervised strength and conditioning, and the first practice was on the next day on a Thursday. And get this, when it opened, they then had the right to start signing their rookies. They couldn't sign the veterans until Saturday, and the Cowboys ended up having to cut a bunch of veterans because they were so far over the salary cap that guys like Marion Barber, Roy Williams, the wide receiver, they got released. So it was like starting from scratch. So to me, what's getting ready to happen now, aside from if the coronavirus affects the team, this could happen again. They could have kind of a shotgun start to training camp. It's like, okay, we're ready to go, and we'll see if you can run a 40-yard dash. and Everson, think about it, because if I remember right, in '87 when there was the lockout strike, whatever you want to call it, after the replacement games, you guys just started the season right away. Was there a period of time where they brought you back in and said, okay, practice for a week before you play a game?
No, there was not, because if you recall, those scab games really ended very abruptly. And so we had to be ready to go right afterwards. Some guys had taken off, gone home. They'd gone home to their parents, gone home to the particular states and cities, and no one was in town. So there was this mad scramble to get everybody back into practice, to get everybody back into the state, into the city. And yeah, that was a very trying time. I hate that you brought that up, Spags. I'm getting a little pissed off about that, because you're talking about replacement games. Let's call it what they are. They were scab games. They were scab games. And as a union rep at that time, I was pretty upset about the entire thing. So yeah, 1987 was a little bit more unique.
And Bill, the other thing, the parallel to 2011 is, oh, by the way, the Cowboys had a new head coach that year, right? I know Jason had been there as the offensive coordinator and was the interim coach the last 8 games of the 2010 season. But they're coming off a disappointing season. They have a new head coach with putting in together a whole new program. They had a new defensive coordinator. If you start looking at all these things, it's like, my goodness, this sounds awfully familiar. And I remember that press conference, that opening day in training camp, and one of the things somebody asked Jerry about what he thought of last year and where they were, and he basically said, yeah, we stunk it up last year. So he kind of... So the other thing I remember is, so when they got to training camp, they had physicals at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they had a meeting at 4 p.m., and then they had their conditioning tests, and then the next day it was a walk-through practice, and they did stipulate, I think there was 3 to 5 days to basically go past before they could get going. But they started the preseason game on time. They started the schedule on time.
Well, you think back to this offseason, and thank goodness the NFL made the decision to go ahead and have free agency as scheduled, because all this was coming down just as free agency was about to start, and also to have the draft, because there were some voices out there. There was some criticism from outsiders that why is the NFL even doing this when the rest of the country is shutting down, and kudos to them for making that decision to go ahead and conduct their business. And I, from a personal standpoint, I say kudos to them, because it gave me something to talk about as a sportscaster.
Well, things, I think, once again, everyone's just we're torn. We are torn between, the status quo. We want football. We want sports. That's just the way it is. Baseball people are going crazy. NBA people are going crazy. We are set out enough in our schedule in August to where we think we can just kind of blindly go through with the process as if nothing else was going on, hoping that this thing will just go away. So no, the most unique situation we can ever be in, and at this point is we're hoping that things just fall into place, and I don't think that's going to happen.
All right, speaking about things falling into place, there's a little deadline that's approaching a little over a month from now. That would be the franchise tag deadline of July 15th. I think it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon on July 15th. Is the Dak deal going to get done by July 15th at 3 o'clock?
Well, as history taught us, and I found this little item, that in the history of the franchise tag, there's been 11 instances with 9 quarterbacks, and now we're counting Dak as one of those, that were delivered the franchise tag. And only 2 of those guys have ever played from a quarterback standpoint on the franchise tag. One of them was Drew Brees, and he did that with the Chargers, and I think at that point he wasn't even the starting quarterback yet. And he played under the franchise tag. And then, of course, Kirk Cousins played under it twice. The other quarterbacks that had get the franchise tag before the July 15th deadline, they all signed contract deals. I was going to say long-term, but the one guy didn't sign a long-term deal was John Harbaugh with Indianapolis. For some reason, he only signed a one-year deal for $4 million in 1996. But this goes back all the way to 93 when the franchise tag began, and Steve Young was the first one to get tagged like that as a quarterback. So the percentages say, yes, it's going to get done. But, kind of running out of time right now. What are we at, June 11th?
June 11th.
Got July 15th,
Yep.
So it's 34, 35 days, somewhere in there, to get it done. And who knows, maybe July 14th, when there's a deadline, something happens.
Okay,
well,
so
I recall, Spags, you were very cool about this about a month ago. You were like, hey, guys, everybody just relax. We still have the franchise tag going. Even if he does that, we still have a chance to sign him. You sound like you're a little bit panicked.
No, I'm not panicking because he's not going anywhere. I think from the Cowboys' standpoint, though, they'd rather him charge against the salary cap about $15 million this year instead of $31.4, which is the franchise tag. So from the Cowboys' standpoint, it benefits them to get it done because they can spread out some signing bonus. But on the other hand, Dak last week pledged the $1 million donation, right?
He might try to get that
he
back.
might be thinking, I probably need that signing bonus, I don't know if I want to go to the bank.
I always look at just when you look within the organization, you look at all the quarterbacks that have come down the line. I remember Troy Aikman got his deal done before the contract ran out. After Emmitt Smith had held out for 2 games, they said, well, we're not going to even let Troy get into that position. They signed him to another contract. I think they tore up the remaining years on what was left on his contract. He got his big deal. Romo, if I'm not mistaken, they were just throwing money at him.
When he signed his new contract, it was on Good Friday.
Yeah, that was a Good Friday for him. It sure was. And so you start looking at that, and I was like, man, why didn't they just do this with Dak to where we didn't have to deal with this drama? Franchise tag or not, I don't think franchise tag was in existence when Troy signed his deal.
Maybe
if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe the third contract, but yeah, not the second one, I don't think.
That second one was the big one. That second one was the big one. I was just wishing Jerry could have just done Dak like he did Troy, like he did Romo, and just get this out of the way. I get it. We had Zeke trying to get his deal done, but I would compare that to the Emmitt Smith-Troy deal. You got both of those deals done without having to deal with your quarterback's decision-making process in the future, and so I wish they
the only other Cowboy high-profile player that was in a contract dispute with the Cowboys, and he was not under contract anymore, ended up being Michael Irvin, because they ended up signing him if I remember correctly, the Wednesday or Thursday before the season opener. He missed training camp, the entire training camp, and came in, and I'll never forget this, Michael, only Michael, right? So the next day he signed, they're in the locker room, it's lunch hour, and Michael struts from his locker, which is at the far end of the locker room, all the way to where the shower is, butt naked, and saying, "Don't you all miss seeing this body?"
He loves himself so much, doesn't he?
By the way, speaking of the playmaker, Michael Irvin, Mickey, do you think Michael could win a championship with Dak Prescott as his quarterback?
You never had a problem with Troy. He was good. He goes, "I don't think you could have won a championship with Dak Prescott because he's not accurate and he can't put the team on his shoulders." And Michael said, "I don't know who you're talking to, but they ain't talking to me. I won championships with everything."
It's not about the quarterback. It's all about me. Gotta love it.
All right, so prediction time. When is the Dak contract going to get done by? What's your over-under? What's the date? What number does Dak wear? He wears number 4. I'm going with July 4th. America's team signs America's quarterback on July 4th.
Only you, Bill, would put it in that context, and I love that context. I'm going with the July 4th America's team concept as well. I like that, William. I like that.
All right, everybody will be on vacation then,
Okay, Mickey's back. Mickey, as we close out Mick Shots for this offseason, we'll give you the final word.
What do you want me to say?
Well, it's your show. You gotta have something ready.
All right, we will start training camp on time. There will be an NFL Hall of Fame game, and the next time we all get together will be when the players return to the Star for the first full training camp at the Star. And remember, bring your suntan lotion, because I went by there the other day and they're putting the windows on the Dr. Pepper building on the other side of the field, so there's going to be a lot of sun reflection out there.
Oh my God.
And who's going to be the happiest camper when they start training camp? It's going to be Dak Prescott, because he's going to have his brand new long-term contract.
I want to know when we're coming back. Forget the season. When are we coming back?
Just follow the players.
Yep. When the players are back, we're back, I guess.
There you go.
All right. That does it
Good
for
job,
Mick
guys.
Shots. For
Good
Everson
job,
Walls and Mickey Spagnola, I'm Bill Jones. And thanks again to the offseason MVP, Chris Beam, who kept the thing on the track despite the fact that Mickey's shot was going down continuously each and every week. We'll see you next time.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!